For a great cup of joe, there's one thing you should know. Your morning brew can also be playful. Buff Boy Brewing guys make the temperature rise. And you surely feel naughty when you swallow our coffee. If you want some real heat, give your mouth a fine treat. You will want some more, rest assured. Buff Boy Brewing, you can't get enough of.
It's time for The Scribble, your weekly fix of celebrity chats, bizarre stories in the news, and basic random chatter with best-selling author and syndicated radio host Jeremy Bradley. Make sure your seat is in the upright and locked position and your barf bag is securely in place. Here's Jeremy Bradley.
Thank you very much, Larson. Jeremy Bradley here. This is The Scribble. Thanks for tuning in. 30 minutes of time-wasting fun, as we like to say. And happy Memorial Day long weekend to ya. Yeah, this is the official sort of kickoff to summer, isn't it? Right? I mean, for me as a Canadian, my holiday, Victoria Day, was last weekend. And that's the weekend where, weather permitting, you go and you open up the cottage, you got your t-shirt and your shorts on, no matter what the temperature. I should point this out, that I think it's like a rite of passage that when it comes to Victoria Day weekend, so I guess that's the third weekend or whatever of the month. I don't know how the calendar falls. I just know it's a long weekend and, we take it for that. And yeah, that's sort of the official kickoff to summer, Memorial Day for the American friends. And so I almost, they almost want, let's just move it up then. Like, let's just make summer start in May. And maybe that'll make us feel better about the whole thing. They did that when remember, when we changed the time and clock or whatever in spring and fall. Didn't they move that up by 3 weeks or something? Now, I realize this seasons fall based on, like, the sun and rotate, but what is the daylight saving time thing for then, really, right? I mean, if it makes us feel better, if it's a mental thing that, okay, well, we're not going to use, power or whatever, I don't know, what is the reason of it anyway? Have summer start in May. Just make it a date on the calendar then, screw the earth and the globe. We're already pissing that away, so we might as well. Oh dear, I'm going to get letters. But anyway, happy summer to you. And full disclosure, by the way, I don't want to work on the Friday of a holiday weekend, right? So we're actually taping this. It is Wednesday, May 25th for me here. Now, let's sort of get serious where, everybody's talking about the latest mass shooting in the United States, the Texas elementary school. And here's the deal. By the time this airs on Friday, we might already have a replacement school, to fill in the blank, or even just location. Because as all of the news outlets have been reporting over the past couple of days, it's 200 and some mass shootings. It's only 140 some days into the year. Do the math on that. And we're getting all the statistics about 300 million people, 400 million guns, depending on the news outlet that you watch, by the way, because I've noticed some sort of conflicting numbers. Nevertheless, another tragic shooting. And it's always interesting. Me being somebody in the media, in the news, I've been, writing for the newspaper for 19 years. Radio stuff is a little bit more, I'm entertainment host, celebrity stuff, so we don't really talk about world events unless the celebrities are chiming in, right? But it's sort of awkward for me to be critical of the news when I'm one of them, and I always find the reporting a little bit weird. Now, in this instance, being the elementary school in Texas, it's relevant to say that there were 13 children, 2 adults or teachers, whatever it might be. I've never understood, though, when it comes to reporting, why we call out when a child has died. So let's take this out of the shooting thing. But let's say there was a car crash, or there was a plane crash, or there was something. It's always interesting to me that we hear, 37 were dead, including 2 children. And I don't get that. Because a human is a human is a human is a human is a human. So one loss of life is tragic. 14, 37 or whatever the number was I said a moment ago, that's tragic, period. I don't care if it's, 13 men, unless it's relevant, right? Unless it's something specific where it's like women were targeted, 13 women were killed. Sure, it gives you some context to the story. So it's always, I feel it's the media telling us that we should feel sadder because it was innocent children, whatever. Now, don't even start writing and saying, oh my God, you're a heartless dick, blah, blah. Let's flip this around. If somebody went to a senior's home and, these people who might have, dementia or just, completely out of it, like my grandma was towards the end of her life, I mean, she would be just as confused as to what's going on, right? So, you almost kind of want to go and say, bottom line is 7 seniors were killed in this attack or whatever it might be. That's the tragedy. It's 7 people, and I always just kind of feel like it's sort of that manipulation where I should feel worse because they were young kids at a school, as opposed to middle-aged, unsuspecting people at a grocery store. Do you see what I'm saying here? Like, it's always, bottom line is people were killed, and that's the tragedy of it. That's the sad part. Again, like I said, the relevancy that it was an elementary school, so of course you're going to say it was 13, 14, 17, 18, 19 kids. I get it. But when it's not in such a specific, when it was a church shooting or when it's, name your place, right? I mean, it seems to happen anywhere and everywhere now. But that's sort of my one criticism of the media is that, let's focus on, it was the facts. It was 21 people killed, period, end of story. And that's something I'm not pertaining that to this Texas thing, but just, overall. So that's sort of my one thought. And then secondly, now, as you already know, and you're probably hearing already today, just whatever time you woke up and turned on the news or, opened up your phone and scrolled, is that you're going to have all the people now on social media who are doing the whole gun control now, vote. And there's a part of me, again, as an outsider, as a Canadian, there's a part of me that sort of thinks, well, maybe this is a country that doesn't want to change. Now, hear me out. Let me finish this statement. It's a country that doesn't want to change because you'd think that if the majority of people want, it's the power of the people is the saying that I always heard when I was growing up, right? Majority rules, isn't that? But then how does it not in this instance? Right? And so in Canada, yes, people have guns and there are shootings and it's tragic. They're just not as many, and they're not, as, they don't make, I guess they do make national headlines when there is one because it doesn't happen often, is sort of the thing. When you hear on the news that there's 200 and something of them this year, are they all on the national news? No, they're not, because it happens so often and it's almost not news, which again in itself is sort of sad. So for me, I kind of sit here going, this is a country that just seems to like fighting with itself all the time and kind of debating each other. And it's almost like thriving on chaos and disagreement. And I don't get that. And I think a lot of that too, it comes from the politicians, because I wrote my newspaper column about this several weeks ago, where I happened to be watching something from Ottawa in our parliamentary system in Ottawa, where, and it's fitting, right? Because the different parties sit across from each other. So it is sort of like that forum. It's like this gauntlet, this, whatever you want to call it, or the one side, and then they're cheering and they're heckling each other. And I wrote in that column that it feels like they're disagreeing with each other for the sake of disagreeing with each other. And you only see them come together on something like Ukraine. Isn't that fascinating? Where it's something that doesn't, in a roundabout way, it doesn't affect Canada. Now, again, hear me out. Like, it's not a direct effect on Canada. Nobody in Canada is facing the threat of being killed with the Russia-Ukraine war. Like, you see what I'm saying? Yes, it affects the trade, and that's not what I'm getting at. But it's so very weird when you have the parties come together for something like that when it pertains to another country, halfway around the world. But yet, when there was, the protests, the trucker protests in Ottawa earlier in the year, that I know made national headlines. Or when, there's just something that involves, it's very, very rare that you have the parties all agree and applaud each other and support each other. But then when there's an issue at home, it's just like, well, why aren't you guys agreeing on that? Like, why don't you come together on it? Because if there is, let's say, a mass shooting, you're going to have this side has done this one has done that, whatever. Yet a country invades another country around the world, Now we're all friends. Now we all agree. Now we all say whatever it takes, we'll help them. But yet you're not even helping your own people on that. So now let's flip that back to the United States in this scenario here, where look at the money that the country has poured into Ukraine assistance and bringing people over, refugees across the country, across the world, excuse me, and all that money. And then you have the critics who aren't very loud, but they do make a good point where it's kind of like, wait a second, we have people starving, homeless, and everything in our country, but yet somehow our government finds billions of dollars. And I'm one of those people right now that when you say the word billion, you really hit that B. I don't know why people have done that all the time, right? You don't hear million unless it's Dr. Evil. But for some reason, when people say the word billion, they hit that B, so it's got that emphasis. And so, when you kind of look at that and go, you've got money to make all that kind of stuff happen. You can send warcraft, or I don't even know what they're called, fighting machines, let's call them. You guys have the resources and the power and the money and, to do all that, to help another country around the world. But in your own backyard. And, we saw President Biden on, for me it was yesterday. I keep thinking that it's Friday today. It's not, it's Wednesday for me. But then you've got the president who just also kind of seems hopeless as he's standing up there going, this has to stop. Well, I, again, as an outsider looking in, are saying to myself, well, that's the president. Isn't there one person in that country who can sort of make it change or make it happen, right? Like, we know when Trump was in office, there was no shortage of things that he would just sign an order and boom, there it happens. And so it's interesting to me just going back to that point of I feel like this is a country that, we need to change. We need to have gun control now. We need to change now. And maybe the voices aren't loud enough or there's not enough of them. But it seems like the country's being held hostage by politicians. And that, to me, as a Canadian, is just so backwards because, as I've always said, you people work for us. So as much as everybody, I watched The View and all these shows where people are saying, you've got to vote. Well, that's not doing anything to change what's going to happen tomorrow at the church next week, at the school next week, at the grocery store next week. Who gives two shits about voting 6 months from now? The change needs to happen now. And at the same time, if you've had how many different votes over the years, like I said, on local levels, federal levels, whatever, and nothing has changed. And I don't want to go and say, well, then just give up already. But I mean, there comes a time when you're sort of just saying, like, are we just spinning our wheels? Or maybe that's just what this country's going to be and we've got to deal with it. Which is, in and itself, is sad to say that too, right? So it's kind of interesting to hear all the sides, though, like I said, none of them are really new arguments because we've been hearing about these for, how many years. And, so let me just actually click over to Facebook because just moments ago, I saw somebody post, and right, you've got these people who are typing, paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs, and it's this, you get on your soapbox because it's Facebook. And I always say to myself when I read these things, you're preaching to the choir. Like, I can read, you're going to say, when will this end? It's got to stop, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you're basically writing it to your friends and family who most likely already agree with you and share the same opinion. So I don't quite understand then, that's one of the problems I think with social media, giving everybody that platform to blast it out there, because I just kind of sit there and go, do you take this rage that you're typing? And I'm just looking at something right now, and being a writer as long as I have been, this rant that somebody has posted, I would say is close to about 300 words. So, I mean, we're looking at many, many paragraphs on a Facebook post here. But I always say this, have you sent this to your elected officials then? Have you sent this to the people that actually have the power to make these changes and do things? Because if you haven't, then it's wasted energy. And so when it comes to let me just scroll here. When will this end? It's a discussion about guns, mental health, blah, blah, blah. Again, that's great. And I agree with you, but it doesn't really matter what I think because I'm not the one with the power to make the laws. Yes, I have the power to vote, but at the end of the day, right, it's the people who have that pen stroke or that thumbs up or thumbs down, however they vote in different systems, they're the ones that have the ultimate say. So I'm not saying that we defer to them because they have all the power. I feel that, yes, as the voter, you have the power. But I guess what we're seeing here in the United States is that, yeah, voters, you don't really have the power. And that's what's very, very strange. So when I open up Facebook, and then of course I see this here where somebody says, no one ever talks about putting God back everywhere. This never ever happened until they started taking God out of school, government buildings, etc. I was in school in the 60s and 70s and this never happened. God is our foundation to everything. He has to be first. Remember when 9/11 happened? We came together as a country. We hugged one another no matter color, political stance, religion, gender, etc. We just loved on each other for mutual comfort. We went to churches, any churches, to get close to God and find answers. Now a school shooting happens and within minutes it's political and all we talk about is gun reform. The bodies of those babies are barely cold. People are in shock, in mourning, devastated, never to be the same again, and all we talk about is gun control, politics. God first, then mental health, bullying, which is a huge problem in schools, guns, etc. Let's get back to our God foundation, being good to one another, looking out for... Here's the deal here, okay? Let me just put it like this. And because there's a bunch of people who actually laughed at the comment as well, too, because I'm one of those people... when there was, I think was it a hurricane that hit Texas many years ago, and I saw a meme, I guess it's called, and it was an empty truck, and it said the latest or the first shipment of thoughts and prayers has arrived, and there's an empty truck, and now that is kind of the thing that people are jumping on, going, thoughts and prayers aren't going to change anything. And I remember when Corona started, and there was a house down the street from me where it said, don't forget to pray. There was a big sign in the window that says, don't forget to pray. And I'm not crapping on what people want to believe or want to think or whatever. I mean, if you want to do the church thing and think that God talks to you or says this and that, have at her. I'm not one of those people. I live for myself. I don't live under somebody else's control that I have to do this or I have to do that. Obviously within the laws of where I live, sure. But what I mean is I'm not going to go into a little box and kneel down and say, I sinned and how do I be forgiven for my sins? Fuck that. I mean, I'm going to do my own thing. I'm living for myself. I really don't give two shits about, what anybody thinks of me. And that's always just how I've been. And so it's interesting then when these people will call on their faith and it's like, trust you. Well, God didn't stop Corona. So how do you explain that? How do you explain it? Don't forget to pray. Your sign is still in your window almost, 2 years, 2.5, 3 years into the Corona thing. It's still wiping out people. It's still really. So how do you justify that? And so when I see something like this, which is, just pray, let's be good to each other. I don't know that that's going to cut it. What will? I don't know, and I'm not even saying that I have the answers to that, because there are far more educated people with knowledge about everything, about gun control, about politics, about mental health, about everything that I just listed that person had, cited there as the potential issues. I mean, there's so many more experts, and now on the cable news networks, right, you're gonna see that. Aside from CNN Plus, which, womp womp. But that's what we're going to hear now for the next few days, weeks, whatever. And it's going to be that debate of, how do we change it? How, what's the magic solution? It's this person, it's that person, it's this political party, it's that political party, it's this gun maker, it's this gun lobbyist, it's this whatever. And lots of finger pointing. And that's kind of the message that I was just seeing on the news before coming and doing this show, is it's kind of like, well, maybe we don't know who to blame, because it's kind of everybody then. It's the voters who are putting these people in. It's the gun makers. It's the people who make the laws that make the guns available to people who are very young. And, that's just kind of the reality of everything. And, I think I kind of laughed and I said, well, as long as they're still banning books, as deadly as those books are, or the words, don't say gay. And I tweeted something on today, Wednesday for me. I tweeted something that said, when I first started out doing American radio, there were a lot more rules than in Canadian radio. Now, I was never a shock jock on the air, and I still am not. I mean, this is as shocking as I get, is my controversial opinions here. But I remember there being lots of do's and don'ts when it came to being on the radio. And what I mean by that is, for one of them that sticks out to me in particular was, I was only allowed, a person, not necessarily just me, a host was only allowed to say the word vagina one time on daytime air. And it had to be in a medical context. The second time, you'd either be bleeped, which radio doesn't really have bleeping like that. But the second time, you'd basically get your ass handed to you. You'd be in shit if you said vagina a second time on radio. Now, me being an entertainment host and celebrity reporter, when would that have ever come up, right? I mean, that's not... If I reached that maximum, that threshold of 2 usage, I mean, fire me anyway, because I'm obviously hosting the wrong show or covering the wrong things on the air. So, but I just remember it being kind of strange where... there was a rule like that I can only say a body part. Now, I understand if you're being crude and you're using it different ways, but I mean, but yet I can go and buy a machine gun down the street. That's okay. So I can't say vagina on the radio because it's a body part, but it's a bad word. But I can go buy a machine gun and blow your head off or shoot you in the vagina. So can I say that? No, I couldn't say that. Like it was just so bizarre to me. But that was one of those things. And I mean, I asked that many, many years ago because as a Canadian, we've always looked at this gun debate thing as just sort of weird where, people, yes, in Canada do have guns. I personally, and I'm totally honest, I know a lot of people from coast to coast in Canada. I know a lot of people. With the exception of one who lives in the country and has it for protection from wildlife, I do not know any Canadians who have a gun. And so that's my point, is that Canadians just don't have that mentality or that mindset. Now, I remember the first time that we broadcast our travel tourism programming from Houston, and my producers and our segment producers had said to me, and there's quite a few guns in Texas, so just don't have like a freak out if you see somebody with a gun, because again, that is a shocking thing if you're a Canadian and I don't see people at a McDonald's with a gun in Canada. You just don't. And so they were saying to me, be mindful of that and don't have a reaction, right? You don't want it to be like, oh my God, here's this Canadian going to come in and start talking about gun laws and things like that. And I didn't, because I'm not really political anyway. But, we're hanging out with the tourism board people and, or marketing people from, restaurants or hotels or wherever the hell we were visiting. And I remember having dinner with a marketing woman, and we were in a lounge. And of course, there's always that icebreaker of like, so it's really different in Canada. Oh, so what's it like? Oh, I've never been to Canada. That generally, without fail, we would end up having that conversation because that's sort of the go-to, I guess. And so, of course, guns come up. And she said to me, just sort of casually, that probably half the people in this room right now have a gun on them, right? And at that I had to pause for a second because I almost kind of felt then threatened. I mean, it's not something that I'm going and looking, going, okay, yeah, she probably has a gun. He looks like he's probably got one. Not her, but definitely the guy she's with. I wouldn't do that, right? I'm just that naive, that innocent as a Canadian. And so right from that point when she told me that, I was kind of on edge. I was a little bit worried because in my head, this is where now in my head it's playing out that we're going to be at the OK Corral and all of a sudden there's going to be this shootout. Somebody's going to have too much to drink and is all of a sudden going to lose their temper, and now I'm going to be dodging bullets under the table because there's a fight in this bar. That's really honestly what I thought. I'm not even exaggerating. I'm not making light of it. I'm not mocking. I'm just saying that was how I felt. And so it's very weird to kind of be in that scenario where I thought, holy crap, now that I'm walking around in Texas, I'm going to be looking. Do I see guns? Because I wasn't looking for it until somebody had said that to me. Now, I also realized that there's places, I did see a video, this is many years ago online, where you have this restaurant Subway employee, and she's got a gun just on her hip behind the counter. And I kind of sit there going, yee. But in the American society, and depending on where you live, that's just kind of like, well, she's allowed to. So that's fine. I'm allowed to, own chickens or something in my backyard. Doesn't mean I'm going to do it, though. I'm allowed to own guns in Canada, but I just don't. So, and then there's that argument of people will say, well, it's for protection. Here's the deal. Many years ago, somebody or two people or whoever, my house was an attempted break-in hotspot. Not hotspot, whatever. Somebody attempted to break into my house when I was home. In that moment, I didn't know what was happening. I heard the doorbell ringing like crazy and my dogs were going nuts. I didn't know. I just thought somebody was, pranking or, was trying to get my attention. Generally, I don't answer my door anyway because I don't want to get stuck with somebody trying to sell me something for 10 minutes. That's what it is. I'm not fearful in my neighborhood. I'm really not. but I just don't go to the door because, if I'm not expecting you, I'm not coming to the door. And so in that moment, right, this is where people would say, well, I'd go to my gun safe, I'd get my gun, or I'd go to my bedroom into the dresser and get my gun. And let me tell you, in that moment, I had no idea what the fuck was going on, and I was in a panic. I was not thinking straight. My dogs were running around. It was just nuts. I wasn't in the right mindset to go and get my gun. I don't have one, but I wasn't in that mindset. Secondly, because I was scared shitless and just sort of confused and whatever, I mean, there could have been I could have ended up shooting my dog, right? Like, who knows? So as a Canadian, I'm just kind of like, well, I wouldn't feel safer having a gun. I would actually sort of feel, scareder, if that's a word. And we're already out of time. Holy shit, I didn't even take a break. We haven't even done anything, and we're out of time to go. Let me just, one more quick point, because when I was growing up in school, I graduated the year 2000. I think Columbine happened 99 or 2000. So I was in high school when Columbine happened. Every day when I was in school, and by all accounts, I went to the toughest school in my city. It was 1,600 students. It was always the rough and I never saw one fight ever. I don't know anybody who ever brought a weapon. No knife, no gun, no pepper spray, no whatever. I couple weeks ago, I had gone for lunch with my mom, and we ended up going to a mall after, and there was a school right by there, and the kids were everywhere. And my mom's like, oh, something must have happened. The school's in, but why are all the kids at the mall? Why are all these kids wandering around? She goes and asks two girls, oh, what happened? Oh, somebody got pepper sprayed. And my mom kind of had a reaction. My mom was a teacher for 30-some years, and my mom was sort of shocked. And the girl's like, no, that shit happens all the time. So just to be so cavalier about it, and use that word, by the way, to a 60-some-year-old woman, it just took me back. I was kind of like, first of all, did you really just use that language with her? But then to be so blasé about it, like, just another pepper spray, no big deal. Really? I mean, if that's the way the kids are feeling, yeesh. And I did write a newspaper column about that several years ago. It was called "I don't want to be a kid in today's world." I mean, it's scary out there. It's pretty bad. We've got to take a break, a very quick break, and then we'll be back on the Scribble right after this.
This statement has not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. No offense, but are you a little fat when you look in the mirror? How would you like to learn the secret to losing 3 to 5 pounds a week without joining the gym or going through any crazy diets? It's called Body Sculpt RX. For the last 2 decades, we've helped countless people lose thousands of pounds. And now, it's your turn. Learn how to lose weight with one simple phone call and no prescription needed. You'll see an amazing difference in a matter of days. Don't believe us? We'll offer you a risk-free money-back guarantee. So, if you're ready to start losing weight, call right now and get a free month supply with your first order of Body Sculpt RX. Call now. You have nothing to lose but the pounds. 800-459-6838. 800-459-6838. 800-459-6838. That's 800-459-6838.
Listen up, guys. Are you experiencing any of the following? Fatigue, less drive, poor performance? If so, you may be one of the nearly 30 million men in the U.S. today dealing with ED. But did you know you don't have to pay hundreds for a prescription anymore? And you don't have to deal with the hassle of seeing the doctor or the embarrassment of going to the pharmacy for a certain pill. Now with one free call, you can find out how Herbal Virility Max can help you feel like a man again. For over a decade, Herbal Virility Max has helped guys just like you put a smile back on their face with improved performance and drive. Call today and ask about our buy one, get one free offer. Save the money, save the hassles, and get the better blue pill. Dial 800-578-0179. That's 800-578-0179. 800-578-0179.
Ever had something to get off your chest but never had the balls to say it? That's a load of crap. Speak Free with JB.com is exactly what you've been waiting for. Your chance to tell it like it is and not care what anybody else thinks. Have your say on issues of the day. Join newspaper and radio columnist Jeremy Bradley as he tells it like it is. Hundreds of thousands of people have stopped by, including some well-known celebrities who have had a chat with JB and speak candidly about what's really going on in the world. You can join them too. Have a rant or a rave. Be brave and head on over to www.speakfreewithjb.com now.
Isn't it crazy that you wait for payday, but before you know it, you're strapped for cash again? It's time to stop blowing your money and become a smart spender with the book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate at cheapskatebook.com. Learn simple ways to cut costs at home every day and during special times of the year. Don't go broke at Christmas. Don't remortgage the house for a fancy vacation. The book is filled with tips to save you money throughout the year. Check out the best-selling book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate at cheapskatebook.com or on Amazon and iTunes.
We hear you chirping. Get scribbling. Tweet up the Scribble at The Scribble Show. Join the discussion with Jeremy Bradley. It's all going down right now on Twitter at The Scribble Show and at thescribbleshow.com.
Jeremy Bradley here, back on The Scribble. I blew through that show in one segment. I will talk to you next week. Happy Memorial Day weekend, everybody. Bye-bye for now.
Want more Scribble? Check out thescribbleshow.com for past shows, celebrity interviews, cheapskate tips, and more. That's at thescribbleshow.com and on Twitter at The Scribble Show. The Scribble is a speak-free media presentation.
If you want some